Welcome, everybody. My name is Reuven Azar. I'm the Deputy Head of Mission here at the Embassy of Israel in Washington. Thank you, everybody, for coming. And I want to, first of all, introduce my colleagues we have Reuven Levenston here from AJC. Reuven is heading Project Interchange. That's one of the most, I think, significant projects we have here in the United States, led by AJC, sending numerous delegations per year. Thank you, Reuven, for being here with us. Andy David, my colleague from San Francisco, is now 4 years here? 4 years. 4 years. Thank you for being with us. By the way, you have the bios in the internet site. The bios, so I won't read bios of any of them, but you have a chance if you want after the panel to go and dive into that. Yehuda Yaakov, my other good colleague from Boston, Consul General in Boston, is here for 1 year already, or not yet?
2.5.
2.5?
Seems like just yesterday.
And Judy, coming from Atlanta. Welcome, Judy. She's our Consul General in Atlanta.
And say I'm your good friend.
And she's my very good, but I don't want to say for how many years you are my good friend.
We don't count.
Okay.
No, in Atlanta 1 year.
Jonathan, my colleague from AIPAC. Welcome, Jonathan Kessler and friend. He's director for strategic initiatives, and we've been engaged in numerous activities.
And 36 years at AIPAC.
Only 36?
We don't
Okay.
Count policy conferences.
Great. So welcome. Our panel today is Israel in the world, but specifically we're going to concentrate in relationships between us and the Jewish community with three main constituencies here in the United States. The Hispanic community, Afro-Americans, and LGBT. Now, I'll start, first of all, by saying that, for us, for Israel, the main difference between our work here and work anywhere else in the world is that Israel not only enjoys an amazing relationship between governments, between the government of Israel and the United States, and cooperating in various areas, in almost every area. But also, it's unique because of the nature of the relationship between the peoples, relationship with Congress, relationship between communities, and because we share values, because Israelis love America, because America loves Israel. And another asset that we have is, of course, the Jewish community that is very active. And we cannot talk about the relationship between Israel in these three constituencies without talking about the relationship of the Jewish community with those constituencies, because however we're going to make an effort in Israel to engage with those three communities, it won't be ever comparable to anything that Jewish Americans that are living here are doing with those communities and how they interface with them. So in many ways, not only that we consult and we cooperate with the Jewish community in our engagement with those three communities, but also we lean on American Jews when, in many respects, whether it be in events that we do, whether it be on strategy, on how to address our relationship with those communities, etc. So what I'll do, if I may, I want to, first of all, give a chance to each of the panelists to talk a little bit about what they are doing currently with each of those three constituencies. And then we'll do another round, and we will talk a little bit more about the challenges, and we'll then open it for questions and discussion. So I think that if I have to focus at the end of the day on what is that we need, or what is the result we want to have from this panel, is how the Israeli-American community can play a role in that regard, and that what would be the challenge and what are the players. Maybe you will be able to learn a bit more about the players here and how until now they've been doing their activity, and maybe you can draw some conclusions from that for the future. So I'll stop here and I'll give the floor to Reuven.
Great,
Please.
thank you, Reuven. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. I'll give a quick overview of what AJC's Project Interchange is. We are about to enter our 35th year of taking public policy leaders to Israel for tailor-made itineraries that expose them to a variety of viewpoints from the left, the right, the central, Jewish, Israeli, Palestinian, go into Ramallah, expose them to a variety of different viewpoints that they certainly are not getting on the media, and enable them to come to decisions on their own that ultimately lend to a broader base of pro-Israel supporters. We have taken approximately 6,000 leaders from around the world, from all 50 of the United States and 95 countries, and a number of them have been from some of the groups that we're here to talk about today. We have 4 specific areas, and across all 4 specific areas of our strategy are Latino leaders, African American leaders, LGBT leaders. We focus on the university sphere by taking university presidents and provosts and deans. We focus on media opinion leaders from all around the world. We focus on government officials and diplomats. We recently took a delegation of 11 UN ambassadors to Israel and are taking another delegation in December of UN ambassadors. And the last area is civic and religious leaders, and that's where primarily we've been able to take the heads of prominent Latino organizations across this country to Israel to really foster personal connections, to change perceptions, and to read through the headlines that they get in the media. Is that
Thank
my
you,
2
Reuven.
minutes?
Yeah, you're on time. Thank you. Jonathan, please.
Hispanic Americans, African Americans, LGBT, why these 3? 15 years ago, when AIPAC looked at engaging a variety of political constituencies beyond the Jewish community, we identified 66 constituencies of enormous significance, and these were 3 of the 66. Then we spent 2 years determining which of these constituencies deserved our attention. And the most important thing for us to realize is that how we engage constituencies must follow from why we've targeted specific constituencies and maybe prioritize certain constituencies over others. How follows why in the same way that form follows function. Is this a matter of messaging in a traditional community relations sense? Is it a matter of coalition building? Blacks and Jews, Jews and Muslims, et cetera, or is this a matter of maintaining the bipartisan coalition for a strong U.S.-Israel alliance by focusing on the political constituencies that have dispositive influence within one party or another? By the way, 15 years ago, we reduced the list of 66 not to 3, and we included several that are not on this list. We do work very closely and have for a decade and a half with Hispanic Americans, African Americans, and LGBT activists, but we also work with religiously motivated Christians, veterans, labor leaders, progressives, and young people. And what they have in common is not whether they are easy or more challenging to engage, not their sheer numbers, but rather the impact that they have and, more importantly, will have on the Republican and Democratic parties' priorities, focus, preoccupations moving into the future.
So, Jonathan, although you've done your 2 minutes, I want you to please describe to the audience what actually, that it means. What are the things that you do actually with those
Okay.
groups?
So I think you know that AIPAC is both a grassroots organization and also a leadership empowerment organization. So of particular concern to us are not African Americans, but those African Americans that will be part of the Congressional Black Caucus, those African Americans that will be governors, those African Americans that will be part of the cabinet of successive administrations. And we have been rather successful in identifying young, emerging political leaders, sometimes when they're in their teens, sometimes when they're on college campuses, sometimes when they're just getting into state politics, and sometimes when they first emerge as congressional candidates. AIPAC built a relationship with Barack Obama before he was a president, before he was a presidential candidate, before he was a U.S. Senator. We built a relationship with him before he was in the Illinois State House. The relationship we built with Sarah Palin was before she was mayor. The groups that we are most excited about bringing to Israel for the first time would be the national, state, and local leaders of the College Republican National Committee and the College Democrats of America. And the fact that we bring them to Israel together, lock them in a bus, don't let them come down from the top of Masada until they understand the importance of working together, may be one of our only hedges against the breakdown of bipartisanship that we're witnessing today.
Great, thank you, Jonathan. So both, I think that AIPAC is more focused politically in trying to identify leaders that are going to play a role in politics, and AJC is sort of having a more of a broad activity with a variety of leaders that are relevant not only in American politics, but also in other surroundings. I'd like to now turn to my colleagues, and please, again, I want you to focus on the activities that you do, and then afterwards we're going to deal with the challenges. Please, Andy, we'll start with you, then Jacob, and then Judith. Ladies first? Okay, ladies first, please. Andy, please, Judy.
I have a big black community in Atlanta and in the surroundings. If you look at each and every one of the states that we are in charge of. And I have Hispanic community, growing Hispanic community in Atlanta. I admit I have no answer why, but I don't take care, so far I did not, the group of the LGBT. It does not have any problem, I would say, that forced me to look into it immediately, but I might do it when I come back. The major problem, or not problem, because in the South everything is quiet, more or less, and now that we got the Midwest, Missouri as well, the major community which causes us some problems is the black community. What we are doing, as Reuven asked me to focus on that, is basically it starts with engagement. We are not too big of a consulate, but we are very strong. Engagement means I had last week a dinner, sit-down dinner at my house for 40 people, which are considered the leadership of the black community. And they were coming from lots of walks of lives, academic, politics, police, airport, mayor's office, many, very many very important people. I don't suggest that they are the people who can go to the Black Lives Matters, or they are the Black Lives Matters. but they can approach those people, they can be part of our doing and activities. We meet with lots of legislatures, local legislators, mainly black, who can have some suggestions of what to do and how to do. They are in close touch with that community. We are working the universities. We have 2 black universities, one for men, males, and one female, the Morehouse and Spelman. It's not easy to get there and to get a speech or whatever, but we manage with the directors and with the students as well. And the last, which is not too much yet developed by me, is the whole question of black churches, which should be actually our basic perception of how to get to the lower levels. But at the reception, the head of the Ebenezer Church was sitting next to me in my dinner, and he was very active, and it was very impressive when all the people had noticed that he is with us. It's a lot of work, this part of the engagement, but it's doable. Atlanta is not too quiet because they had, if you noticed 2 days ago, they started protesting against, but quietly, not too loudly. Kasim Reed is very, very strong with them, and we'll see what's next.
Thank you, Judy. Andy, please.
Okay. Thank you. I see that we have a lot of young audience in the crowd, and I guess that a lot of you are Israelis. When you go on a date and you meet somebody, usually you don't start by saying, "Hello, my name is Andy. Let me tell you about my problems." You start with the good stuff. And I think that we've seen, at least from my experience in the last 2 years, as Israelis, we tend to look at the problems and the negatives. There is a community out there, a huge community, American community, that doesn't really take a lot of interest in us. And when we talk about those particular 3 communities, these are communities that are very liberal by definition, or mostly liberal. Maybe the Hispanics are somewhere in the middle. But the conversation with them cannot start with problems. It has to start as Israel is an asset, why it's relevant and attractive for them to be in relationship with us. And this is what we're trying to do. The importance of those communities, because if you look at the numbers, maybe progressives or in the US, we're talking about 15%, their influence over the American conversation is far more than 15%. They set the tone, they set a lot of the agendas, and they say sometimes the weather comes from the West. A lot of those ideas start in San Francisco, in the West Coast, and then they reach DC, like same-sex marriage, for example. Therefore, my concentration on those communities has to be through strength and attractiveness and relevance. So I'll just name 3 things. Been working a lot with those communities. Let's start with the LGBT. There's always an argument, which is the biggest pride in the world? Is it Tel Aviv or San Francisco? So Tel Aviv is the biggest in the Middle East. There are over 1 million people coming to Pride in San Francisco. Since I arrived, we started the tradition of building a huge booth on that day on the streets. We have thousands of people crossing through our booth, learning, experiencing. We have a lot of music. It's just a fun experience for them, and many times they're surprised that we, Israel, is part of their fun for that day. We get a lot of cards, we get a lot of relationships from that, and we do a lot of great new relationship by that. Talking about the African American community, in San Francisco it's not a major community, although in Oakland there are. But just one example, Clarence B. Jones, Dr. Clarence B. Jones, who wrote the draft speech for Martin Luther King, I Have a Dream. He was his lawyer, he was his close friend, he lives in Palo Alto. He's somebody that I reached out to, he became a very close and personal friend. He writes, He teaches at Stanford, at the University of San Francisco, and for example, because of that relationship with the issue of Black Lives Matter, he published 3 articles at the Huffington Post explaining why their agenda was hijacked and why Martin Luther King will turn in his grave if he saw the anti-Israel tendencies or policies that are starting to emerge within that movement. When it comes to the Hispanics, again, I don't look at those communities as separate. They're Americans, they're part of everyone. So I don't want to get in touch with them because they're Hispanics. So what I did is I found a group of tech leaders who are also Latinos. And this is the second year, this year was the second year that I took a delegation of tech leaders from the Hispanic community, Latino tech community leaders to Israel. Phenomenal success. The fact that they wrote over 17 articles on Forbes, the relationship that were built with Israeli companies. You mentioned Judith, the Morehouse College. One of them is an advisor to the Morehouse College on how to rebrand themselves because alumni of that college tend to stay away, they don't give enough. So he helped them as somebody who is trying to do social design as an advisor. So he was in Israel, he was able to help me connect African Americans, although he's Hispanic. So you cannot look at them as separate. You have to take them and treat them as you're there because you're an expert on technology, for example. And by the way, you're also Hispanic. If Israel is relevant to your life, you're going to have a relationship with me. If not, it's going to come to a delegation and then he's going to disappear.
Thank you, Andy. Jacob, please.
Yehuda.
Yehuda.
Our approach in the Consul, I think, has been, I would define it as being very holistic. You've heard 2 different approaches, at least here so far. On the individual basis, identifying people who will be relevant over time. On the other hand, searching out the relevance and then creating, strengthening that relevance. We've taken those, definitely taken those 2 components, but I would add 2 other components. First of all, one I learned from one of my mentors, who happens to be here today. I want to give him a shout out, Michael Miller, the legendary head of the New York JCRC. Is first of all to listen. To listen to what those people that you want to engage in, to see what's relevant to them, and what is burning in their bones, and then pursue before you even pursue the relevancy, pursue the partnership, and this is how we've tried to pursue our own work in New England. I just kind of want to put on the side the Latinos and the gay community, so I can focus on the African American, which has been most of our work in the last 2 years. Latinos, because we don't really have, I mean, as Andy said, you know, if they become elected officials, if they become leaders in the business or innovation community, then we engage with them as Americans. Absolutely. It's not even a critical mass in our area. As far as the gay community goes, I think we're beyond targeting them as an audience, frankly. And I really do think, as Israel, it's time we moved on. It's my personal opinion. I think I have a lot of partners to that feeling in Israel officialdom. In our area, just in Massachusetts, the Attorney General, the President of the State Senate, the head of the JCRC, and a host of others are declared homosexuals. Okay, so it would be weird for me to interact with them is just because they were homosexuals and say, hey, Tel Aviv is gay friendly, why don't you come and visit? It's not natural, and frankly, it's offensive. And I think we're in a place now we need to just, they've made, the gay community in America and in Israel and other places make great strides. I suggest that we interact with them as they're just another group of influentials, and they've already integrated into the influential community across the board. African Americans. I approached, I think our engagement with the African American community, first of all, let's make a distinction here, and you can argue with me about this, but I think there is a difference between the Jewish community's interaction with that community and Israel as a sovereign state's interaction. And I've approached this very much as a sovereign state of Israel. And I, first of all, listening to them, what pains you, what are you looking for in your involvement with anybody outside your community? And anybody who does that will reach very quickly the same common denominator. You always hear about gun violence, family stability, and jobs. This is what you hear over and over and over, economic development, of course, being a part of that. So we can listen to that, and I'll get back to that point in a minute. In addition, there is what I would call a historical/ethical component that we need to take into account, and it's really, to a certain extent, it's about rectifying history. Because I think we can all agree that the African American establishment, since the inception of the State of Israel, indeed before it, has always stood beside us and supported us. And so then we, as the State of Israel, need to ask ourselves, have we done enough to partner with them? And everybody can reach their own conclusion on that. I reached mine. And we started to work. And going around town to the various elites, you very quickly in our area reached a conclusion that our interaction with them is no different than our interaction with every other group. Because in our area, what turns people on about Israel is startup nation, innovation, technology. And then you take a step back, and this is basically what we did. The previous governor of Massachusetts took 2 trade missions to Israel. The first one had 80 people, the second one had 120. I was on the second mission. People went, came back, more business increased. I won't bore you with all the details. But then we asked the question, okay, how much of the African American community has been touched by the blessings of interaction with Israel in the business innovation level? And we discovered that the figures are so embarrassing we shouldn't even mention them. So bottom line here, what we have done is not only increase the conversation about it, but we actually badgered our headquarters for 8 months to do a pilot to send mid-level African-American CEOs to Israel. That will happen early next year. Not in order to patronize them, but as equals, really on a basis of equality, partnership, and mutual opportunity, where they will be able to interact for the first time for them, and maybe for us, with business opportunities in Israel. And in a way, we'll be starting, it's only the beginning, rectifying 2 historical wrongs. One is to actually engage them for the purposes of partnership, and second of all, to give them an opportunity to engage with Israel from a business technology point of view and increase, hopefully through those interactions, their own opportunities for economic development here in the United States on the ground. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Yehuda. So basically, you not only talked about your initiatives, but also started actually the conversation we want to have now regarding the challenges. And here, I just want to start by saying that, unlike our relationship with the Jewish American community or with the Israeli American community, with which we share not only values, but also we share destiny, we share identity, we share identity, we have a two-way relationship with a lot of interest from each side to engage in a very intimate way. The first challenge with those communities is actually what do we have in common in terms of the issues that preoccupy the communities. Now, we are talking, for example, for the last 20 years about the Hispanic community, but the question is, are the issues that interest the State of Israel, are the same issues that interest the Hispanic community? In many cases, no. In some cases, yes. So the question is, what do we have in common? For example, there are issues that actually are problematic for us to deal with, like immigration, for example, is very relevant for the Hispanic community, and the State of Israel will not deal with it right now with them, especially not before elections. So that's something that sovereign states don't do. They don't meddle into internal affairs of another country. But interestingly enough, the Jewish American community and the American Israeli community does have common agendas with those constituencies in issues like immigration, in issues like civil rights. So in civil rights, we can, of course, have a broader agenda because we also identify with it. But I think that in many cases, those two communities, the Jewish American and the Israeli American, can be a sort of a bridge to those three communities. Now, I agree completely with what you said, Yehuda, that the way of engagement is not necessarily engagement to the groups themselves, but trying to sort of combine them or include them in the things that we do, in the things that we have to sell in this country, whether it be business, like you and Andy mentioned, or be it in other areas like innovation or the many fields in which Israel has to offer, whether it be in science or any other way. So allow me to start this round this time with Jonathan, and then we'll go to Reuven, and then we'll go again to my colleagues, the consuls generals. Please.
Thank you, Reuven. First of all, Andy, that's the worst dating advice I've ever heard. It may be true that you don't start with problems, but you don't start with the good stuff either. And only because there are young people here who are looking for their beshert, I want to say that you start by asking people to tell us about themselves. You begin a date with them, not with you. Okay, that's just my best advice.
That goes without saying.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
We're all over 50. How do we know?
No. I'll tell you. It occurred to me that Andy is so darn good-looking and articulate that it's very possible that it doesn't matter what he says, and he got lucky. But from my perspective, you engage somebody by showing a genuine interest in them. Not a utilitarian interest, a genuine interest. Now, the second point I think I can best illustrate with a story. For those of you who have never been to an AIPAC policy conference, it takes place here and next door in the Verizon Center altogether. It's 18,000 people, a huge number of whom are not Jewish. And there are literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of African Americans from all 50 states. So an old-time board member, Donna, came up to me and in a whisper, she says, Jonathan, why are there so many black people here? So I said, Donna, why are you whispering? She says, I don't want to make anyone feel self-conscious. I said, Donna, black people almost always know that they're black people. I think you should be asking somebody who's not Caucasian. I think you should ask Amanda. I don't want to put, why are we whispering? I don't want to put Amanda on the spot. I said, Donna, please, you're going to get a lot out of this interaction. Amanda, come on over. This is Donna. She's on the AIPAC Board of Directors. She's got a question. Donna is literally trembling. Amanda, it's so nice to meet you. Why are you here? Amanda says, I'm not a gatecrasher. Donna is horrified, mortified that she might. Amanda sees her discomfort and says, no, I'm giving you an answer, a methodological answer. I'm an invited guest. Again, Donna doesn't get it. I didn't mean you weren't. Amanda patiently says to her, we're all invited guests. There are 18,000 people here. Not one of them came because of a group identity. We came because we were invited by a friend who knows and cares about us and was able to draw us in for the same reason that any friendships are forged. And that, I think, is of critical importance. AIPAC has come to understand that relationship building supersedes messaging 10,000 to 1. It's no longer a fair calculus. This is not about the absorption of black Ethiopians appealing to African Americans. There is no African American that gives a damn about that issue unless the connection that they've made is a deeply personal, intimate, customized, authentic, honest connection. If you never want to connect with a non-Jew, talk to them about Israel as if that's what they really want to talk about in their lives. If you really want to broaden the base, it's a matter of all the best practices we learned as children in terms of keeping it authentic, keeping it real, and keeping it honest. AIPAC has been working with Morehouse for 30 years, and Spelman, and I'm shocked that you didn't mention Clark Atlanta, because there aren't two historically black colleges in Atlanta, there are three, and the most important in terms of the U.S.-Israel relationship by far is Clark Atlanta, because Clark Atlanta is the home of the Vanguard Leadership Group, which has been sending 50 African American student leaders to the AIPAC Policy Conference for the last 12 years. They're now a national movement. AIPAC has no idea how to engage any of these groups because we never once targeted groups. We targeted Amanda and Darius and Albert and Jared and Natasha, all of whom, by the way, will be in Congress or the state houses, all of whom have more influence over their social groups of hundreds or thousands than will ever be impacted by a speech, by a movie, by a pamphlet, by a website. There are 6 ways to get the relationship building process right. And I don't pretend for a second that we invented this. We learned from Miller, and we learned from Alinsky, and we learned from the people that have been doing retail engagement for 100 years. But the relationship building process must be a natural one. It must be organic. It must be authentic, as I said, non-utilitarian. It must be personal. We talk about ubiquitous customization, that no 2 conversations are alike. It must be respectful, which means it must be honest. And of course, it must be with an eye toward a long term, not one and done or check off the box. In terms of honesty, and I'll close with this thought for this round, AIPAC has done some remarkable work with the toughest constituency there is. And it's not LGBT, Hispanic American, or African American. It's progressive. We've done remarkable work. And nothing turns progressive LGBT activists turns them off more, nothing, than to tell them how great things are for LGBT community in Israel. Nothing turns them off more, and not for the reason you might think. Not because they take it as patronizing, they may or they may not. Not because they don't believe you when you make the comparison to Saudi Arabia or America. They actually are fairly well informed and they do believe you. So why would a progressive LGBT activist be completely and utterly turned off by you making the Hasbara case that Israel is great for LGBT? Because they're progressives. And all progressives care about is making things better. And if you tell them that Israel has figured this out and it's great, they say, Kol hakavod, and they move on. They want to fix something. I want LGBT activists in the United States to know that 55% of the LGBT young community in Israel has faced hate speech. That is a very engaging topic for LGBT activists in the United States. They don't get turned off that the problems in Israel are real. They actually find that quite engaging. And they want to know, is there any role for them to play in connecting with the LGBT activists in Israel? It's counterintuitive in the extreme, provocative to say the least, something that you might want to think about.
Yeah, and I think that, never you should give the impression to anybody that you have all solutions for everything. And there's some challenge, some agenda you have to share with them. Thank you, Jonathan. Reuven, please.
Great. So with Project Interchange, I think one of the biggest challenges is when you're taking 30 delegations a year, how do you identify the right leaders that will have the multiplier effect that you're looking to, that will really spread across the masses? So when we took a group last year of Latino evangelical church leaders to pick the ones that have incredible followings and then have the similar issues of concern. So one of the examples to see how that really makes an impact is I was in Miami in February and had the opportunity to hear one of the alumni who had come back from the Latino evangelical church leaders speak as a guest preacher in a church down there. It was an incredible service. I don't know if any of you have gone to a Latino evangelical church service on a Sunday with a band, but if you haven't, I strongly recommend it. And it was quite a loud, lively crew. But when he stood up to give his sermon, and he was calling upon them as immigrants in the United States and as immigrants in Miami to let go of their past, in a sense, and embrace the responsibilities of being citizens in the United States, not only paying taxes, but working and being involved in the community. He continuously referred to the experiences and the lessons he learned in Israel. You need to identify the right people that are going to carry on this message. 2 years ago, we've brought about 300 Latino leaders on about 25 delegations to Israel. And we brought a group of national Latino leaders together for a huge reunion in Washington, D.C. And one of our most prominent alumni is U.S. Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor, who, when she was a young lawyer, was identified, as Jonathan talked about, identifying people who are emerging, who have the potential. And she hosted a private reception at the Supreme Court. And it was so tremendous to hear her tell this group of leaders that there is not a case that comes before her that has to do with immigration issues that she does not reflect 30 years back on the lessons that she learned when she was in Israel. In addition to the immigration issue, I also agree with the civil rights issue, which I think is not just an African-American issue, it's pervasive and goes all across them as well. It's interesting, I don't know if many of you have probably seen the announcement of the opening of the new Smithsonian Museum for African-American history this year, and it's interesting to know that in 2008, we took a delegation of leaders from that museum, including the director, Lonnie Bunch, to see what Israel does through portrayal of different communities in museums. And they took many of those lessons back to the United States and incorporated them into building one of the biggest buildings now on the Mall. The reason why I use these as two examples is going back to what's in it for me. What are those common issues? What do I care about? Not kind of pushing down someone's throat the narrative we want them to hear about Israel, but what's going to make them want to continue to be involved. And the last thing I would say on that is another example is really what are people's professional interests. So when we form our delegations, we have an extensive pre-trip survey which asks what their interests are, what their passions are, what their research is, et cetera, so we can create meaningful connections so they have personal relations with Israelis. And it's no longer just a country on the map, but it's personal and deep relations that they will continue to develop partnerships, business entrepreneurial initiatives, et cetera. And one of our Miami Latino leaders who went on this ended up extending her trip and doing a video montage, and she ended up producing, her name's Soledad Cedro, and she ended up producing an Emmy Award-winning TV series that was a 5-part series that not only educated the Hispanic community around the United States, it actually reached down into Latin America, into a number of countries. So again, it's finding these common issues that have to do with people as people, and not the strife in the Middle East, and kind of making it come alive. The last thing I would say is that when engaging in this kind of work, you have to be poised to do follow-up. So we have a director of alumni engagement, and we have offices, 22 around the United States, 10 around the country, and 30 international partners. If you can't maintain the contact and now be a trusted resource to provide educational content on any variety of issues people want from Israel, you're going to lose your return on investment as soon as they come back. So those are some of our approaches.
Thank you, Reuven. Please, let's continue with our colleagues. Judy?
I would like to start with
Maybe
one notion.
Just grab the microphone. Thank you.
I would like to start with one notion. Any trip to Israel is a poisonous treatment. Everyone who comes back from a trip to Israel is coming back a pro-Israel. The 2 major trips which I heard in the last 2 weeks, and I'm going a lot in my jurisdiction, and now that they added the Midwest, I'm going even further. The 2 major trips are Project Interchange and AIPAC. And they start, and I'm referring now to all walks of life, be it blacks, be it Latinos, whatever. They never approach me as I'm LGBT. But all people coming back after a trip from Israel, it's the best thing we can do to those people. Having said that, I don't have problems with the Latinos. I entertain them at home. We don't have problems with them. And for the time being, our major goal is the black community. And the black community in Atlanta is huge. And it's a source we can work with. The black community in other parts of the South is less, economically less developed, but it's still problematic. Look what's going on in North Carolina, etc. We went to St. Louis. Ferguson is still burning, so there are problems. But what I want to tell you about is that we have to add here the element of the Jewish community. They want very much to be of assistance. They want to repair their relations with the black community. The Jewish communities, wherever I went, understand the historical ties between the black community and the Jewish community. And I'm referring to the first generation of the Selma times, when they walked together on the bridge. Does not exist anymore. Our problem is the generation of now. And the major problem of Israel is with the young generation of the black community. Black Lives Matter starts there. The continuation of the bonds and the alliance between the Jewish community and the black community subsides, and it's up to us to build it again. That's why these trips, you cannot compare it to anything. The follow-up, as you said, should be in the states themselves for those who visited there and can spread this idea. So the major problem, I think, is the younger generation. It's tough, either in universities or within the communities. One of the most painful thing I heard a week ago in an ADL meeting, where blacks, Hispanics were there, was a reverend who is going with AIPAC to Israel, said, apropos speaking about universities, but we don't go here to universities. We don't have the money to pay for it. And when you hear it in a discussion, you start to think about it. He came to me after that and he said, well, I'm sorry I said it because I am going with AIPAC to Israel and I know what I want to do, but the rest of us do not have that ability. I think that some of the Jewish communities, mainly in St. Louis, would like to help some of the black communities on economic basis in various jobs, etc. But it's a lot of engagement. And as was said by Jonathan, listen, pay attention, and follow up. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Andy, please.
Thank you. I want to talk to, this is IAC, so I want to talk to the Israeli community. Basically, why is it important at this very early stage, as maybe an infant stage, as the community is trying to form itself and to build itself as a community, as an organized community? Why is it so important at this very early stage to engage with other communities? I often attend all kind of events, conferences by the Israeli community in San Francisco, in the Bay Area. And I see mostly Israelis and a few Jews. I'm invited to attend Italian organizations, conferences, and then I see mostly Italians. I go to Chinese, I see mostly Chinese. Indian, mostly Indian. So first of all, I think there's a huge value to mix the whole thing. It creates more, I think, prosperity for everyone. gives more opportunities, if it's business, if it's community, if it's social. I think that also, if we want to build ourselves as Israeli communities here in the United States in a leadership position, a leader cannot lead without a coalition, without a relationship that he has to build. So I think that's the second reason. You need, if you want to take leadership positions as Americans in the future, you have to have relationships. And this is why I think it's so important. And the third thing is, often when I attend, if it's Jewish events, synagogues, or Israeli events, usually there are all kind of lines of division. Are you a Reform, or are you a conservative? Have you been here for many years? Are you a 20-year-old Israeli here, or are you just relocating and you've been here for 2 years? We always look for where are the division lines. You bring one foreigner into the room, it's really clear. We're the Israelis and he's the other. So I think it also helps to kind of reinforce ourselves as a community by, as very early stage, to engage. Now, as far as challenges, when I was appointed to be Consul General in San Francisco, and I did serve in the past in Chicago, the Midwest, and visited other places as well, my friends joked and they said, you know, we have 8 consulates in the United States and 1 in San Francisco. San Francisco is kind of a different animal, if you want. Talk about challenges. We have we just did a survey about a year and a half ago, 133 organizations which have anti-Israeli component in their activity. Most of them have only anti-Israeli work or agenda. Some of them are national, some of them are international, but a lot of them are local. Organizations such as Queers Against Occupation, the Institute to Counter Zionist Psychological Warfare. These are weird names. So some of them are really weird, but some of them are not. Some of them are really dangerous. We hear at the table that the Jewish community is, of course, an asset, but sometimes, like in our region, sometimes the Jewish community is not an asset. Jewish Voice for Peace, for example, has a very strong presence, huge presence in our area. Actually, the leadership is there. They were founded there, and they fundraise like crazy. Every event, university, trade union, whatever you choose, they're there. Even now, with advocating for the new legislation at the California State Assembly, they were there, lobbying every day with the governor, with the Senate, with the Assembly. So when we look at how much resources they have, we managed to identify from open sources only 25 organizations out of the 133. Only for those 25, we found that they have, again, from open sources, they may have more, over $9 million of budgets, over 100 professionals, full-time, working against Israel. And I'm not talking about volunteers, part-times, and many other resources they have that they're just not transparent. So we're facing a huge machine against this, an establishment, if you want, where Israel is the bad guy. So how do you start working that? What is it that you do? How many people can you take to Israel? You cannot take everyone. So I wanted to maybe bring one more example of a way to reach audiences that otherwise would not come. I've been to Jewish organizations events where they had a reception for Latino leaders at State Assembly, and they showed them scary movies about Iran. And I've heard about delegations where, for example, the president pro tempore, the head of the Senate came to me and said, I was on a delegation, too many generals. I met too many generals that I met in Israel. So we're looking at one opportunity that we try to figure out what is it that we can do. We had the Super Bowl in February in San Francisco, and I was kind of breaking my head, what is it that Israel can do around the Super Bowl? Because football and Israelis, not much. But then I learned that the Super Bowl is the one single sporting event that has the worst record when it comes to human trafficking, mostly prostitution. And found out that the authorities of the airport, the Hotels Association, the police, the FBI, state attorney, US attorney, and the list goes on and on and on, are very, very interested and are worried about this phenomena around it. So when it comes to human trafficking, Israel has had a very bad record in the 90s after the collapse of the Soviet Union, trafficking, sex trafficking from Eastern Europe. And then in the middle of 2000s, we started to take care of that problem in Israel, and we established the National Coordinator for combating human trafficking. And we brought her over to Israel, to San Francisco, and we did an event together with the Mexican Consulate and with the German Consulate to talk about the European experience and the Mexican experience. We expected about 80 people to show up. We had over 200 people, new people that we never had relationship with them. No Jewish organization ever had any relationship with them. No Israeli, for sure, had any relationship with them. They came because of the topic. So this is one of the challenges, I think, is to find the topics, as other speakers here mentioned, to try to understand what is it that we can have a conversation around what, and to be part of a bigger thing. For example, when you bring the Mexicans and the Germans and others to the mix, you're putting yourself in a very neutral and constructive position, where you can have a conversation and a constructive one. And one result of that is the U.S. Attorney in California now wants to head a delegation to Israel to try and have exchange of information. Professionals can meet, talk about the challenges and try to find solutions.
Okay, Andy, thank you. We have only 15 minutes left, so I want to give 2 minutes to Yehuda. I think that we are starting to see the bottom line here, creating common issues, common agendas. Please.
Yeah, thank you, Reuven. I think way back when you asked us to talk about opportunities and challenges. So if I remember correctly, that's what I'd like to talk about. Yes. Just maybe 15 seconds to applaud the IAC for adopting the idea of this panel. I don't know, look around you. This is a full room. 2 people have left. 20 have come in since we started. So let's applaud the IAC. Okay, I'll start with the opportunities again. Remind you, focusing on African America. One of the things that we've discovered is that as we explore these partnerships, we also are touching a broad spectrum of traditional influentials. And you can imagine, you go around town, you knock on doors, one person leads you to 5 more. And the whole town, and Boston is a city, it's a major city, it's a national, international city, are talking about what the Israeli Consul General is trying to do, how he's trying to bring betterment for the local community. And I do this without hasbara, without kind of tooting my own horn. And it goes beyond the community. We have other relevant communities obviously in our area, most notably Bostonians of Irish descent. That is a community which continues to grow, which continues to be influential, and a community which also needs to be touched. That same group of let's call them 30-somethings, who are not connected necessarily to the older generation, who are not necessarily touched by some of the benefits of a traditional relationship with Israel, and then just spreads, as I said, in a very holistic manner. And I think the third opportunity here, and I say this with respect, and both myself and Andy have kind of referred in his own way to the American Jewish community. I have found that our initiatives vis-a-vis African American community have also caught the attention of our friends in the Jewish community, who are interested in seeing how can this help us, or how can we work together to move our relationship forward to a place where we think it should be, and maybe it was a couple of decades ago. As far as challenges, I think first and foremost is to continue to project sincerity. Sincerity is the key here. As I was exploring possibilities, one of the things I did obviously was to meet with clergy. And I went to their churches, obviously, and I don't know what you've heard about Boston. Boston's a very liberal, progressive place, but it's also a very segregated place. And for any diplomat to go into heavily populated neighborhoods of the African American community, Dorchester, Roxbury, Mattapan, that's considered quite an aberration. And you're sitting in a church, and there are drug addicts shooting up heroin on the balcony. All right, I saw it. And I remember one meeting with one of the clergymen. He didn't meet me in his office. He took me out into the parking lot on the main road. Talks to me 20 minutes, and why aren't we sitting in his office? I didn't ask the question. I figured at some point he would tell me. And then he says after 20 minutes, Consul General, do you know why we're having this conversation in the parking lot? I said, no, I don't have a clue. Because this is called, the official name of this neighborhood is Mattapan, but actually it's referred to as Murder Pan. And I wanted to check your sincerity and authenticity. I said, what were you expecting to see? I wanted to see if you were afraid. I said, well, with all due respect, Pastor, I grew up in an inner city New York housing project, and I served in the infantry in the IDF. What exactly do you think I was going to be afraid of? And he said, okay, Consul General, you've convinced me, you're authentic. I've run into this in other places as well. For instance, my first Martin Luther King breakfast in Boston. Put at the VIP table. I think for years, an Israeli Consul General had not attended the event, which is, you all know, the quintessential event for the African American community. And everybody's looking at me. They had this kind of look on their faces as to say, we're happy you're here, but don't really get what you're doing here. Hopefully I was reading their body language correctly. I just opened up the conversation myself, and I said, Martin Luther King was a strong Zionist, believed in the state of Israel and its future. And by the way, Israel today, circa 2016, is a country of color. And then you start talking about the changing demographic in the state of Israel. And this isn't the place to go through it, but think about that. Think about how not only do we have stereotypes about people, but people have stereotypes about us. And we can break those down. That's an opportunity. Colored. We talk about African America, but the truth of the matter is there is a changing demographic within that. More and more blacks, particularly in our area, are from the Caribbean, Haiti particularly, Africa, and it's less homogeneous than perhaps it was in the past. Also, there's more talk about people of color, which doesn't just mean people who are brown or black or mulatto, but also who are Asian. And there's an expectation that the conversation be expanded to them as well. That's an additional challenge for us.
Yehuda?
Okay, one more minute. Changing leadership. Traditionally, it was believed that you could just go talk to the leading clergy, the NAACP, the Urban League, and then it'd be like one-stop shopping. That's not the case. If it ever was, certainly isn't today. I had a group of the leaders of an organization called Black MBAs, national organization with the Boston chapter, came to my office. At my invitation, I asked them, have you ever engaged with Israelis? They said, what do you mean Israelis? We've never met a diplomat in our lives. And of course, there is more, and in that vein, there are more and more African American professional organizations, which are over time probably going to replace the traditional leadership organizations.
Thank you. We have less than 10 minutes, so I want to open the floor, please, for questions. Go ahead. Yes, and if you want a specific person in the panel to answer you, just ask that, okay?
All right. Hello, my name is Lee Block. I'm a freshman at Goucher College.
That is a microphone, believe it or not.
Oh, all right. I'll just repeat what I
Looks
said.
like a pillow.
I was wondering what that was the whole time.
This is the strangest microphone I've ever seen. Anyway, I'm Lee.
Top
I'm
technology.
a freshman at Goucher College, and my question is this. Tiny bit of a tirade, but I feel it builds up. Anyway, I find that Israel is losing the battle for the hearts and minds of the youth and the progressives, who very often I find are one and the same. And I find that the reason for this is partisan political polarization of the Israel-Palestine conflict. As Mr. Kessler pointed out very astutely, progressives want to fix things, and they see that they see the conflict as a very important agenda item. And I find, because conservatives are generally pro-Israel, the progressives naturally gravitate towards the other side. I was wondering how politics could either be sidelined or implemented in outreach for progressives and youth, because I find that there is more in common between progressives and youth and Israel than there is apart. After all, progressives really are the startup generation, and Israel is the startup nation.
Okay, we have two people that want to answer. I will say very briefly, look, one of the things that I try concentrating in my conversations, in engagements, is the issue of the regional challenges that we face and how functionality of our society, how societies that are open face those challenges, and how Israel is actually having a role in stabilizing the region, okay, by focusing in those civil issues that are important, including, for example, the challenge that we share now with the advanced world when it comes to the crisis of the middle class. And this is very relevant for the elections now here, for example. It's relevant everywhere. So one of the ways of doing it is, look, maybe we should look at it in the reverse way. In order to solve conflicts that we have with our neighbors, we have to concentrate in, having things work. Try to create societies that work, that function. This is the challenge that we face. Please, Jonathan.
Okay, first of all, I want to thank you. So completely on target. I would suggest 3 ways that are not theoretical, but have been extraordinarily successful. First, Joey Lowe, a business leader, created a program years ago called Israel at Heart. What he did was he took generally teams of 3 young Israelis, male, female, gay and straight, black and white, and did not put them through any Hasbara training and let them loose on the American campuses to be themselves. And I once asked him, what are their political orientations? He says, I have no idea. And did you look for ideological balance? He said, they're Israelis, they're all divided between left and right. It worked its way out. It was the single most successful effort of all time, so of course it no longer takes place. The single most successful, and by the way, it could be replicated for pennies on the dollar. Second, AIPAC decided to specifically engage the most progressive young people in America, literally the most difficult target audience. We were told that as soon as we say AIPAC is looking to gather, it would be a non-starter. We budgeted for 75. We had 250 applicants and had to do a second conference with twice the number 6 months later, and we still had a waiting list, and we're now doing this on infinita again and again and again. And what we chose to do there was to ignore everything good about Israel and to run toward the issues that the progressives defined as most compelling. We didn't tell them that it was less important than Iran. They wanted to talk settlements, they wanted to talk asylum seekers, they wanted to talk religious coercion, they wanted to talk treatment of Israeli Arabs, they wanted to talk, so that's what we talked about. And we did it for days on end, day and night. And at the end they said, thank you. Thank you for your honesty. Thank you for trusting us not to hate Israel after an honest conversation. And when and how can we continue this conversation? And by the way, if you want us to lobby against the Iran deal, we're prepared to do so because we now understand that a nuclearized Iran will set back the prospects for peace and justice for the Palestinians. It's a remarkable transformation. It took all of 48 hours. And third is taking them to Israel on a completely different itinerary. Israel is the most progressive society on earth if you look at the number of progressive NGOs per capita. There are more progressive NGOs in Israel than in America or any place on earth. And you could literally build 10 days around an engagement of just the progressive NGOs. What's remarkable about the progressive NGOs is that they're run by Zionists. They're run by progressive Zionists. They're run by people who deeply love the state of Israel and want to fix it, just like the progressives we bring over.
Thank you.
How's that sound?
Jacob, please briefly. We have
Yeah.
we want to give a chance to more people to ask. So please.
I wanted to just kind of change a bit the terminology of the question, but this is not empirical, it's intuitive. My sense increasingly is that millennials and progressives, no matter if they're supporters of the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, or independents, it's becoming synonymous, that social issues are very much becoming crossovers. I think we should recall what Mayor de Blasio in New York said recently, that supporting Israel is being progressive, and this dovetails with what Jonathan said here. Social justice, community service, creating partnerships. Once we can not only show them, but get them to do it together on both sides of the ocean, I think will significantly advance the cause that we've been trying to deal with.
Thank you, Yehuda. Please.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I have a question inspired by the recent BLM platform, obviously not great for Israel, and also what I think is a particular blind spot at the intersection of Black Lives Matter and support of Israel. My name is Nathaniel Malka, by the way. I'm from Los Angeles, but I used to live at Dolores Park and worked at the CICC a lot in San Francisco. My parents met in Atlanta. My brother lives there, and 4 years at Harvard. So connections to all three of you, and thank you for being here. After the recent platform was announced, you really start to see a lot of Jews of color groups pop up in different places, certainly on social media, and also these are starting to co-opt the story of Sephardic and Mizrahi Jews. This is a particular issue of interest for me. I'm on the board of Jemina. You probably, Consul David, know Jemina very well. And this has been in the blind spot, I think, for supporters of Israel. How much of a concern is this particular issue in terms of the detractors of Israel being able to co-opt issues around Jews of color and Sephardic and Mizrahi Jews by a strange extension of that? And we'll speak about November 30th commemoration later.
Well, Andy, you want to answer that? Please.
Yes, I'm very familiar with this. And again, JVP has this huge effort now to try and portray Sephardic Jews as being or being abused by Israel, and Ethiopian Jews, and police brutality against Ethiopian Jews. I mean, these are stories that we hear in Israeli news, but it's not an easy challenge because they, first of all, see Jews as white. They see Jews as successful. They see Jews as influential when it comes to the establishment, and some of those who are promoting this are anti-establishment, whatever it is. I had a conversation, very interesting conversation with the chief of police of San Francisco, the new chief of police of San Francisco, which is African American, because his predecessor had to resign because of another shooting. He was white. And he said that lately he's been getting from some of same activists, he's been getting photos of himself with a guillotine next to his face. And he said that we have to understand that a lot of it is against people who make six figures, like he's accused of being that, and because he's making that six figures, then he's an enemy. The fact that he's police chief makes him an enemy. So we have to be careful. We have to be very careful to not paint all the African American community as being anti-Israel or being anti-Jewish, or it's not the case. Yeah. But I think that the Israeli community, and again, I'm trying to get, if this was a Jewish event, I would maybe say different things because or give different advice. But for the Israelis, I want to focus on you. I think you are positioned in a very unique way. I've had conversations with a lot of friends in the Jewish community, and I asked them, can you name 3 comedians that make us laugh, make us sad? Usually they can't do that. What I'm trying to say is that you know what Israel is. You can tell your personal story. You engage and you tell them, okay, this is me, this is where I live, this is where my family comes from. My family is challenged with this or that. Here's what makes me laugh. This is what makes me cry. This is what offends me. This is how I feel about my life in America as an immigrant. This is me feeling that sometimes I'm discriminated against because I have an accent when I come to a job interview. I served in the military. I didn't serve in the military. I mean, be a person, put a human face. I think the bottom line is put a human face on Israel and start talking about Israelis and not about Israel. And
especially, Andy, when it coming back to your question, you can also, of course, take the pride that Israel takes, and I take personally, by mentioning just the fact that Israel is the only country in the world that has promoted immigration from Africa not for the purpose of enslavement. And the amount of the billions that we are investing in closing the gap between our black community in Israel and the rest of the population.
That's a great.
Yes, please. Go ahead. You had a question. Yes, you. No, you had a question. Oh, it's for him? Yeah. Oh.
So I'm Mitchell. I'm a sophomore at Yaakov College, and I have like sort of a comment and then a question on like what you guys think about that. So my junior year of high school, I was in a program called Operation Understanding DC, which is a mediation program for Jews and African American high school juniors in their senior years, based in DC. And I think that like a big issue with trying to connect the African American community now is like we try to bank on the history of what we did. It's like, oh look, we were there for you. We did do this. And I think that the issue is that we're not doing those things now. And I mean, you know, like you mentioned, you can take people to Israel and be like, wow, look how great Israel is, look at the things that we do frequently. But I think more to Jonathan Kessler's point of making individual connections is more important. And I think that mediation programs like that are good for making friendships between Jews and African Americans. And then as a result, you get to talk about Israel and how it's a value for you. So would like any of you guys think of like programs like that or something similar that could be done on college campuses or even like in a high school?
Yes, well, I agree with you that we should focus on that more. Unfortunately, I can tell you sincerely that when it comes to Israel itself, we usually tend to coalesce with a lot of the Jewish American organizations, and we don't have, besides of the resources, the human resources that we have in engaging with the universities themselves, we have very few programs that engage in those kinds of activities, and that's it's connected to lack of budgets. So, but it's very important to us to be in interaction with students, and usually we do encounters like that. We did one last year, a national encounter. We're going to do another one probably by the end of this year to bring people from campuses that are active on Israel. Try to listen to them, try to see what bothers them, and give them the tools, but also take ideas in order to implement further on. Unfortunately, we have to leave because the next session is about to start. But I want to take this opportunity to thank all the members of the panel, Jonathan, Reuven, Yehuda, Andy, Judith. Thank you very much.